A very good evening and welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Tracy Shilshi, and today we're looking into how major banking transactions took a hit today as over 17,000 employees of the Reserve Bank of India went on a one-day mass casual leave. The protest, the first at the Apex Bank in 6 years, was called by the United Forum of the Reserve Bank officers and employees, the umbrella organization of 4 recognized unions of officers and other employees at the central bank. Among the services, of course, that were affected were check clearances, payments and settlements, and, of course, forex transactions. To help us understand their main issues, why are they protesting, why this one-day strike, we're joined by a CPIM Central Committee member, Nilotpal Basu, here in studio. We also have BJP National Spokesperson, Gopal Krishna Agarwal as well, and senior journalist Priya Ranjan in studio with us. Also, joining us, of course, from the capital, we also have former staff member of the RBI and the IMF, Renu, Kohli, as well. Mr. Das, if I could come to you first, since we're talking about the protests, about the issues. It's, of course, about the protests are against these reform measures of the central government and also seeking pension, seeking pension reforms. If you could elaborate on these issues and how long have these protests been? I mean, what was the need for this one-day casual leave?
To be very frank, it's silly. You know, when did you last hear about US Federal Reserve or Bank of Japan or Bank of England or the Central Bank of Russia or the People's Bank of China on strike for an entire day? The central bank of a country getting paralyzed and not working, that sends out real wrong messages all over. In this present world, where the financial markets tend to be in turmoil, for purely sentimental reasons, these kind of strike, that too, Reserve Bank of India or a central bank of a major economy like India, which is aspiring to be a world power, a powerhouse for growth, world economic growth. Now that is being allowed to be dysfunctional is a very serious issue. It's as good as the army of a country going on strike. And this is a very serious matter. This strike is silly, and the government appears to be even sillier for letting such a thing happen. Whether the disruption in the money market, in the bond market, and in the stock market, in fact all markets, and in clearances of checks, payments and settlements, whether that has been, how much it has been, that is one question. But the magnitude of that kind of loss apart, in terms of pure sentimental message that it sends out, it's a very serious thing. Because for a government, which is, if it is to show that India means business, it can't just let Reserve Bank of India to be rendered dysfunctional, even if it is for a day. Having said that, look at the issues, so-called issues, for which this strike was staged today.
Yes.
Now there is it seems to be ideologically inspired, that it is against reforms of the Reserve Bank of India that is being attempted. The proposed reforms, whether to create a monetary authority
but how does it affect those particular workers who are so-called?
Exactly. Means I do not. It affects the entire country, 125 crore people, because their economic prosperity growth are linked to those reforms. So if those reforms are bad or good, the debate is at that. In terms of the employees, individually or even 17,000 collectively of Reserve Bank of India, it is silly to argue that they should alone be taking a stand on this.
Mr. Basu,
and opposing such a thing.
Do you agree this is just an ideological stand that they're taking? It's mere tokenism. Why, I mean, if at all, why a one-day mass casual leave? Just one day. I mean, if you have to do these...
I think while I was listening to Mr. Dash, I was really simply amused. Silly and sillier and all these things. Now, economic journalists, some of them in our country, think that they know everything about economy and about people. and what are their sentiments, how they respond, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going into that. I am saying what are the two demands. First demand is that what he is calling reforms. It is not reforms actually. This is actually a one-way traffic for the Indian corporates. And till now, debt management and management of the government securities was managed by the RBI itself. The government wants to step into this. You have seen there's a long prelude. All this while there was a running battle between RBI and the finance ministry. Now, everybody knows that for last few years, one of the major reasons of India doing not as badly as some of the other countries that he was naming was because of the kind of firm position that the RBI had taken and did not submit to the almost threat by the government to somehow bring down the interest rates. Now, if we look at the scenario of NPAs, of the kind of mess that the corporates have created, the way they have managed the debts they have picked up from different banks and so on and so forth, it will be clear why there has to be some kind of a tightening. Now, all over the world, any reform, I mean, there's a arm's length between the government and the regulatory agency. And here they want to wipe it out. Because, you see, after all these largesse to the corporates, what is happening that the corporate debt is going up, NP is going up.
So what you're saying is this strike,
growth is coming down.
That was by the RBI employees, these units, it is not to do for the employees themselves, it's for the greater good of the country.
Of course, it's a policy question because today you start with undermining the regulatory function. And the second question, which is directly related to the employees, is of pension, of revision of pension rates, of linking it to market rates. Now, Mr. Dash may think it is very silly, but given the kind of situation of everyday hardship that employees and pensioners face, I mean, it's a justified question. Even the RBI, in its annual report, has put it that this is long pending. For 6 years, they have been representing with the government that please sit with us, please discuss. There has been no response at all.
Yes.
So, as a result of this, these two issues, and the first issue is no less important. You see, the employees, that they take up a policy question, because ultimately we have seen in many other industries that it starts with a deregulatory move, and ultimately that leads to undermine and weaken the very existence of that organization. So,
right.
in a way, I mean, this is a higher level of strike where the employees are not only talking about their immediate threat, but they are also, I mean, they are sort of trying to preempt the kind of difficulty that they
Mr. Agarwal, I will get your reaction, definitely. But first, if I could just get the issues, of course, with Mrs. Kohli as well. Mrs. Kohli, do you think, of course, these issues that they are striking, that they strike work against today, these are valid concerns, or do you think this is just an ideological, a tokenism kind of a, what do you think this particular strike has achieved?
I tend to not look at it in terms of in ideological terms. As Mr. Basu explained, there are two issues, and from what I know from newspaper reports is that one is the pension issue. And to me, it seems that these are things that can be well resolved by talks on either side. And of course, it's been pending for long, and I guess it can be resolved. However, the other aspect is to deal with reforms of a nature which would eventually implies hiving off of a function which is quite a significant part of the Reserve Bank's functions, which is to do with management of government debt. Now, many arguments have been made, both in favor and against, and there are equal arguments, by the way, on either side. It isn't that only the RBI has a vested interest. There is a vested interest on the part of the government too, because the government tends to be the owner of the major part of the banking system. So what it boils down to is eventually capacity. Which institution has the capacity to deal effectively and efficiently with this function? Currently, to me, it seems the RBI has it. And past reforms would tell me, do indicate that every time new institutions have been created, particularly those relating to one or another function of the financial system, the Reserve Bank has played a very active role.
Yes.
And indeed, in terms of also in terms of endowing and exporting its own capacity in creating those new institutions. And this goes back, you know, when NABARD and Housing Bank and many other institutions were created.
All right.
So one is that aspect. Second is that this issue I do not think has been debated openly and extensively and enough as also in depth. It isn't very clear as to whether this would be a good or a bad reform, because many reforms meet with opposition, particularly those where functions of existing institutions and employment matters are concerned. So it's reasonable and logical to expect resistance.
All right,
so
all right.
Perhaps a bit more debate and it could alleviate some of these concerns.
All right, Mr. Agarwal, of course, what is the government's reaction to this particular strike, and B, why didn't you try and control it? I mean, as a central bank of your country, which, you're going all across the world, the Prime Minister is going all across the world saying that come do business with us. But then just after he comes back from G20, you have the central bank that's going on a strike. What kind of a symbolism is this, of course, to the entire world? Why did the government not try to, of course, talk to the people and make sure that this strike didn't take place?
I would like to say on behalf of the government and the party, most probably on behalf of the parties, that in a democracy we say that strike is a right of legitimate right of, and it is a part of, we should not curb it on that way. But there are Essential Commodities Act and other issues, Essential Services Act, under which they can be controlled.
Yeah.
But this is not a full-fledged strike. It's a token strike where RBI employees have themselves said on the issues that we want to flag off some of the issues in front of the government. Having said that, there are three major issues that the strike people are saying. One is the debt management agency.
Yes.
Another is the RBI's policy or with regard to rate of interest, where which has been said to be transferred to a committee instead of only the governor having the veto power. And the third is the pension issues. Pension is their personal issue. Their demand is there that the government will look into it, and where I don't think RBI is an independent body and it has its own corpus which will look after the payment on the pension issues. I think that will be resolved between the government and the employees. On the issue of
when
debate,
it has been going on for 8 years. The strike that took place on pension was, of course, in 2009, 6 years back. But the talks have been on for the past 8 years.
Earlier
now.
there are effect, and these demand, etc. Every institution or people have their demand. Government has also a counter stand that will be negotiated and settled on the basis on the issue of this policy matter. I would definitely like to say is whatever changes the government is doing, it is not doing on its own behalf. A financial sector legislative reform commission was set up long back. It has given a very big report, and it says specifically, it has an extensive report which says that in India we have several regulators. SEBI is regulating capital market, commodity market was being regulated by Forward Market Commission, IRDA was regulating insurance, and RBI is regulating this money market instrument. And we have seen so many conflict arising between SEBI and IRDA. Even RBI and SEBI has come in conflict between various issues. And this Financial Sector Legislative Reform Commission extensively deals with issues. It has recommended that setting up of FSDC, Financial Sector Development Council, and it has also said that we should have an integrated regulatory mechanism where conflict in diverse policy matters should be resolved at the Ministry of Finance level. And these reforms are based on those recommendations. And we have seen that FMC has been merged, Forward Market Commission has been merged with SEBI based on those recommendations. So you should not call it a policy implementation by the government alone. There is a commission which has given its extensive report. Based on those reports, these reforms are taking place. And even RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan has said specifically that debt management requires a separate government will also, because there is state government. We are seeing a lot of fiscal deficit, and state governments are taking debt and debt.
All right.
So these issues need reforms. And I agree that every change is not a reform. So you should not call that government is going on a reform and an institution is being curbed. Ultimately, there will be change in the policy, and those institution people should not decide what is good for the nation. It has to be a cohesive and comprehensive view. Their view is important, and that view is there in the committee also, the 7-member committee which will decide on the rate
Their
of
view is
interest.
important. Their
Yes,
strike.
and government will consider.
As part of a democratic country, it is their right to strike
And
work.
once we have
Even though it does signify a shaky economic environment that the
I
central
don't
bank
think it's a shaky
employees
environment.
go on a strike for an
No,
entire
this is not
day.
a shaky environment. In a democracy, strike is the right of the people. You cannot say they cannot strike. And even this is a token strike. They have the right to flag off their issues. That issue is not by the government. A commission has given a detailed report. Based on that report, these are being implemented. Still, they are having say in these issues. And there is a difference of opinion whether rate of interest should be the sole priority. How you can say the governor alone can decide he should have a veto right there? When we have a diverse economy, various regulators are there, all issues should be considered, and then a committee may decide. And it's also a recommendatory role that the commission will have it. I don't think this is a major issue to be having so panicked about. Government is appraised of the situation.
All right, Mr. Basu, would you like to respond to that?
You know, it is good that at least he is not saying that strike is silly. Because if anything at all, the strike has been able to highlight and flag the underlying issues which create a tension. And hopefully he is also providing the olive branch, and I think it will be negotiated. That will be a very good thing. But I think this whole business about committee functioning and committee recommendation, this is sham, because I have been also part of this parliamentary process. You see, whenever government wants to do something, it appoints a committee and have its recommendations to its liking. This entire process of privatization, if you see in the financial sector also, such things have happened. And so far as the coordination of all these regulatory functions, etc., he is talking about, I have been a member of the parliamentary committee which went into the share market scam, and how all these things were happening and what role the regulators were playing is in itself a part of the scam engineering. And therefore, the one regulator who came out with a little bit of honor was the RBI because of its management. And I think in the recent years particularly, globally, you were, Mr. Dash was talking about our aspirations, how our economy is functioning. In fact, the role of the RBI and the independence with which and the vehemence with which RBI has appeared before the global economic and financial world has actually created a certain positive impression. If anything will be acting as an inducement, is actually the independent functioning of the RBI. And it is not two small issues. You see, these are major functions of the RBI. If you take it away, I don't think much remains in what RBI and the instrument with which RBI can intervene and play this balancing role.
All right.
I have
Dash,
two small questions, if I can ask Mr. Basu.
Yes,
One question is, when you decide a debate on a policy matter, then how, and take a position on the policy issues, how can you say one institution is more nationalist or more genuine than the other institution? There are different institutions. They are taking one thing. And second is, that we are not taking away these functions from the RBI. There are several functions, and these committee will also function as a recommendation.
Well, it is good that you are saying that, because most of the concerns are that eventually
Yes.
it is going to be that the government
think,
has control over
being
it.
in politics, you should understand the overall perception.
All right,
That
Mr.
is what
Dash.
matters. And there RBI has gained certain credential and credibility.
Yes.
Therefore,
Mr. Dash,
that
you
is a
of course,
concern.
are of the view there was no need for this strike, and we wonder why, of course, the government didn't try and work things out. Yes, it is okay to flag off concerns, but was there a need for this strike in general? Fine, okay. But isn't there also truth in it that when you have concerns, you need to express them? Otherwise, what happens is eventually it gets pended up, and then you have an award wapsi kind of thing that eventually happens. And then they say, we've been tolerating for too long, and this is eventually, bahut ho gaya, like that. So RBI employees are, of course, saying that we are seeing something that is concerning, and we are just, we're flagging off our concerns.
Tracy, without the pretension of knowing everything and without any axe to grind, I would say that, you see, the broad issue is being debated not now, not after the Financial Legislation Reform Commission report, but it's being debated since the Harshad Mehta scam, for 20 years, over 20 years now. It is in the wake of the Harshad Mehta scam that it was realized that the Reserve Bank of India, both as the monetary policy authority and as the management of public debt, is not the ideal situation to have. For 20 years, this is now being attempted.
Okay.
And that debate is going on. Reserve Bank of India employees at all level, from their subordinate staff to the highest management, getting involved in this debate is, that nobody is questioning that. But to strike work on such policy issues which concerns the entire country is what I was questioning. Of course, the pension issue has been there for 8 years, as you said, and that's been added as an afterthought to bring in the employees. The unions are clearly trying to remain relevant, and so that is an attempt. One-day strike, how does it achieve anything in that? I do not know. And one knows that compared to other government staff, forget about other workers in this country who do not even have one pension. Reserve Bank of India has one pension, second pension, and they are asking, and the third pension, and they're asking for an upgradation of the pension.
If I could come to Mr. Basu with that, we are running short of time. But Mr. Basu, if you could react to that, I mean, as far as pensions are.
Tracy, I just wanted to tell, just to say on the question of the public debt management. See, the essential issue is that Reserve Bank of India, on behalf of the Government of India, issues the government bonds, then it intervenes in the money market. So it is a player in the market, and yet it is the regulatory authority. This is one issue. There is a conflict there. Second issue is the sheer capability of handling banking regulation, being the monetary authority, and then also managing public debt by the single agency. That is another issue.
Okay.
These have been matters of debate,
yes,
which is still being debated, and there is no finality as yet, as Mr. Agarwal is pointing out.
Absolutely. Mr. Basu, if you could react to the pension issue.
I mean, I am not going to join issues with him because he has a certain attitude towards the workers. I was just wondering why he was not invoking the situation of the unorganized sector employees, because 94% of them who are under contract, they do not have any social security. So why they should at all have a pension? That could be also the argument if the way he is overstretching the point. So I think we agree to disagree on that.
No, but is it not true that compared to other employees?
No, why should you go into the comparison? Therefore, why will you not compare the situation
because
with...
you are a central bank, and on this particular issue, you're going on a strike for an entire day.
If certain people have come to enjoy historically something, so naturally they will try to improve the situation. And if you go into comparison, then you could as well compare that 94% of the employees, they are in the unorganized sector. They are not having any social security. So why RBI employees also should not be brought down to that level? That could be also a logic. Or
I was just pointing out that compared to others, the RBI employees seem to be more privileged at the moment.
All right.
Because from 1st January 2004, as we know, for all recruits, fresh recruits in government, there is no pension, only a contributory
I think it is
pension.
these very.
that is what employees are fighting all over.
These very concerns, because of these very concerns, I think this one-day strike was perhaps what RBI employees and unions thought were necessary. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you so much, Mrs. Kohli, as well, for joining us. As you can see, the debate still continuing, and we do hope the government, of course, still continues that debate, comes out, of course, with, of course, a committee that is going to be fruitful. Not just, for the RBI employees, but of course for the betterment of the citizens of this country as well. We leave it for the moment. Of course, do join us again on The Big Picture tomorrow again for another topic. For the moment, that's all I have for you. Thank you.